Welcome. It's so nice to be back. It's been a long time. It's been over a month since my last episode, and I'm so happy to be back. And I've got so much I want to talk about and so little time to do it. It's interesting because we are, in the craft, we are categorized as a religion. And in a way that's true, and in a way that's an unfortunate categorization, because we are a worldview. We're a lifestyle. We're a way of operating in the world. We are a craft, much as the Masons grew out of a craft of masonry. And so the problem with talking about religion is that it's a belief system. And if you've heard many of my podcasts, how I feel and how Eli taught about belief systems as being almost like parasites. They're not necessarily a healthy thing. We don't want to believe in something. We want to know something. And when somebody gives us a piece of data, we are taught, rather than to believe it or take it on blind faith, is to question it and put it to the test. And in that regard, we're actually more scientific than we are religious, because we don't want anybody to believe anything. We want to give you some principles, and then have you test them out and let us know what you're getting from them. Let us know what your results are. And that's why things like a magical diary are so important in the craft, and because without you taking notes and without you keeping records of your successes, then you're not being scientific at all. It's nothing more than a new belief system about whether you're going to do a spell or whether you're going to do a piece of magic, or whether you're working on one part of your life or another magically. If you're not keeping good records and notes of your results and what worked, and most importantly also what did not work, then it's just another, it's another silly thing. You may as well just join a church. So what I'd like to talk about today in regard to magic, in regard to the scientific aspect of magic, is the Hermetic principle of vibration. I think it's so important that we understand these Hermetic principles a little bit more in depth than just a precursory, this is what the principles are and this is what they basically represent. And I love the principle of vibration in regards to magic. Now remember, magic is the science of the Magi, and we define it as being the science of the Magi and creating results through invisible means. In other words, using the invisible world, which we call the mental world, the world of cause, going to the world of cause in order to create results in the world of effect, which is the mortal world of the physical world. A lot of times people talk about two parts of the mind as being the conscious and the subconscious mind, and that would be the mortal and the mental, I guess, the visible and the invisible sides of the mind. The conscious mind, these people would say, is what you think of consciously, what you're aware of in your mind, and the subconscious mind are the parts of the mind the part of the mind that is constantly producing results, but without your conscious knowledge, and that the subconscious mind, these people would say, actually has more power because it's the larger part of the mind. Well, in a way, I would agree with that in that our habits, our mental habit patterns, the way we habitually think of things are what do create the world for us. And what Eli called the mental shield is put up in place that kind of separates these two parts of the mind, because the mental shield is there to keep your reality in check. That's why you don't have to worry about getting up in the morning and worrying that, oh my gosh, if I forget to think about my foot will disappear. And even a little bit more pragmatically, I mean, if you see something that just doesn't jive with your belief system, with your thought system, with your subconscious thought system, you question it and you literally disbelieve it. So if somebody starts to fly around the room, you would wonder what's going on. Where are the wires? What kind of trick is this? You wouldn't just assume that this person is flying around because you are certain that the human body doesn't fly around without some sort of contraption. Same thing with the sun will come up tomorrow. We don't believe this. We know this. This is based on faith. We know that the sun will come up tomorrow. And the reason why we know this is because this has been happening again and again and again. Every day of our lives, the sun has come up, unless you're in a part of the world that doesn't have the sun come up. But for most of us, the sun comes up, or it appears to rise every morning and sets every evening. So our deep mind is what I prefer to call it rather than subconscious. Our deep mind is used to that, and it expects that to happen. And if all of a sudden there was no sunrise one day, we would question the reality of that. We wouldn't necessarily just say, oh my gosh, the sun didn't come up. We would think, oh, did I sleep too much, or am I dreaming, or is there an eclipse, or is it very cloudy today? We would not necessarily just assume that the sun didn't come up. And that's the difference between our mind and a more primitive mind, because in very primitive peoples, they hadn't had generations of habit formed yet, so they were able to believe more superstitiously than we do. So, but the thing about that is that since our habits are also what create our experience in the world, what we were raised believing and what our ancestors were raised believing and what sort of this racial consciousness that we inherited, since, like I said, it's there, that deep mind is there to not be questioned. It's to hold our reality in check for us. Then because we tend to not question things, we just take certain things for granted that don't necessarily have to be so. Something like, oh, our family never makes any money, therefore I need to work at a job I don't like, because that's just the way it is. It's always been this way. That was how my mom did it, my dad did it, all the way back to generations ago. So instead of questioning that and conditioning our deep mind to create a new response and therefore a new result in the world, we just take it for granted that the way it is the way it is. So one of the things that I'd like to talk about today is how our deep mind is vibrating, at what level it's vibrating. Now remember, what have I said many, many times, that if you can think about the physical world as having one function, as having one purpose, and that's to show you what you're thinking deeply. So if you want to know what kind of vibrations you're thinking, what kind of at what level or what rate your mind is vibrating, you look to your results in the world. If you're having a medium or low vibratory experience, it's not because something just happened. It's because that experience is responding exactly to the vibration in your deep mind. It's exact. And that also speaks to the Hermetic law of polarity, that what we vibrate invisibly is what will be vibrated visibly. It doesn't. There's no disconnection there. It's one thing. It's one battery with two poles. So if I'm vibrating at a certain level in my mind in regards to my finances, then that's the exact vibration I'm going to have in my finances. And that's why a lot of people who win the lottery, let's say, and get a lot of money, but they don't change their vibration, go into poverty, go into debt very quickly. Because here you have somebody who was able to have like maybe a spike in their vibration for whatever reason, but they weren't able to change or raise the vibration in a more lasting, permanent sense. So they were able to pull in this windfall, but they didn't have the internal infrastructure to maintain it. So all of a sudden they get back into debt because their consciousness was at a specific vibration. Even like I said, there was a spike which enabled there to be a momentary change in circumstance. But the actual consciousness was such that was one of a particular form of debt. And so the experience had to rise to meet that level. It just has to. It's a mathematical exactitude The consciousness that we are dialed into, the vibration that we are dialed into internally, is in exact proportion to that which is manifest in the world. Because remember, the manifest world is the world of phenomena. And phenomena meaning it is ultimately a world of illusion. And that's not to say that we should shun the world and turn our back on the world and what does it matter. It just means that the world is there as a reflection to what our consciousness is. That's its purpose. Very much like we talk about, like when you go to a movie. When you go to a movie and you watch a movie, the screen is the field on which the images are projected. But the movie is the film, and the film is your consciousness. Your life force is the light, which shines through the film. And your experience is the screen on which is projected your consciousness. So if you don't like the experience that you're having, trying to go to the screen to rearrange the images won't yield you results, at least not in a temporary, in a permanent way, maybe possibly temporary. As Marianne Williamson once said, and I think she got it from somebody else, trying to change the world of effect is like trying to rearrange the decks on the Titanic, the deck chairs on the Titanic. To rearrange the circumstances is like trying to change the furniture around on a ship that's already sinking. That's not going to help you. So what we need to do instead is change the film. If you don't like the movie, you need to watch a new movie. Yelling at the screen that you don't like the way that the director has directed this film will not change the film. The film is already in there. So the only way to change your experience of watching a movie is to watch a different movie, and the same goes for us. The only way for us to change the circumstances in our lives is not to change the circumstances themselves, but to change the vibration internally within the consciousness of who we are in order to have a new result reflected. Now, as we said, our active, conscious, objective mind is a very small fraction of what we're thinking. Our subjective deep mind, some people call it the subconscious mind. If you think about it as, and I'm not going to get into it's very technical the way we determine the different levels of mind. So if I say subconscious, it's not quite completely in keeping with our teachings exactly, but it's good enough that you get the idea of what I'm talking about. Your deep mind, your subconscious mind, that which is submerged under your consciousness, is not only responsible for your experience in the world, it's literally responsible for everything. Like we said, it keeps everything, your reality, in check. So because you have a mind that is going nonstop, you do not have to worry about how you're going to supply oxygen to your bloodstream. You do not have to know or be aware of how your cells replace themselves. You do not have to know how the nerve impulses travel the synapses. You do not have to understand any of that. You don't have to have knowledge of it. You don't have to have control over it. In fact, trying to control our lives by using our conscious mind, our forebrain, is very much like trying to control our body's functions. It's a burden that we're not supposed to carry. We're not supposed to know how to do these things. We're not supposed to know how to make sure that the sun rises and sets. We're not supposed to know how to keep the planets in orbit around the sun. We're not supposed to know and be responsible for the seeds growing plants. We're not responsible for any of that, and we're not responsible for the details of our lives. Our responsibility is only, what do we want? What is it that we want? What will make us happy, right? And so what we talk about in the DCW is you're given problems in order to solve them. How do we solve them? Well, what don't you like about your life? It's a great place to start. Make a list. What don't you like? Take the first thing. What's your biggest problem right now? Go ahead, think about that. What is your biggest problem? It's good to have this problem because it means that it's here for your growth. It was given to you so that you can perfect, so that you can become a better person. Okay, so take this problem, and what is it that you would like to see instead? How do you envision the end result? How do you envision the end result being solved? Not what do you see the circumstances leading up to that? How do you think it will happen? How can you make it happen? What can you do to manipulate the circumstances so that you get that result? No. What do you want? That's all you're responsible for. And once we have that, then we apply our magical principles to that. And whatever your magic tradition is, whether you're in our tradition or another, or maybe you don't have one at all, it's really, remember that the deep mind only understands images. It only understands pictures. It doesn't understand commands. Now, affirmations and words, those are important. I'm not saying that they're not important, but they're only important to the degree that they help you to be able to see a clear image in your mind of that which you want. That's how you communicate to your deep mind. Now, remember, your deep mind is there to hold your reality in check, and it does not want to change. It does not like change because it wants to help you. And the way it thinks it's helping you is by keeping the status quo so that you don't freak out, so that you don't have any upsets. It doesn't care if you're happy. It doesn't care if you, if you like the results or not. All it cares about is this is what you programmed me with. This is what we understand, and this is what we're keeping. So the only way for you to reprogram that mind is through picturing, and you've got to do that with your mental shield down. So that means a total relaxation. And if you're in the DCW, we give you some very profound ways of doing this. But on your own, you can still lower your mental shield, even without us. Okay, anybody can do this. You can go into a deep state of relaxation, meditate, find a trance type state, and visualize that which you want the end result to be. And make sure that you are working on a level that of a problem solving that is profound to you. Don't, it's like, it's silly to try to do this on something that's superficial. Use it for the big stuff. And then take one thing at a time until you've peeled that layer of the onion, and then you can go to the next layer and the next layer. And this is what your life is about: is solving these problems in a profound way. That's what we call the way to perfection. So remember, so that when your mental shield is down, you have direct access to this deep mind, and you can discuss things with it through picturing. And once you've told it what you want, that's your job is done. Then you get out of the way and you let it happen. And then what your job is to watch your attitude. Because remember, your vibration is going to determine the success or failure of your magic. So if let's say your biggest problem is that you're lonely and that you want a mate. And so let's say that you've made a list of all of the qualities of a relationship that you want, and you have every day for maybe a week or two, you have done your relaxation and you've pictured all these qualities, and you've gone through it very clearly, and you've seen what you want. And then you get this, eventually you'll get a sense of when you've done enough, and then you let it go. You just let it go and let it happen. Now, watch what you say. Watch what you're saying. Do you say things like, "Oh, I'll never find anybody," or "I never get what I want," or these things, these horrible things always happen to me? Watch those little subtle things that you say to yourself, because those are keys to what your true vibration is. And when you find that, it's time for you to flip those thoughts around. So yes, words do have power. Maybe not in the deepest part of your magical work, but they do offer you very profound clues as to what vibration you're carrying. Because remember, if you want to know what your vibration is, look to your life, look to the results, look to the physical world, and it will tell you. And if you don't like it, that's good. That's good. So instead of focusing on what you don't like, focus on what you want. ask yourself, if you find yourself going, oh my God, I hate this. This is always happening to me and I never have this, or nothing ever works on this level of my life. Well, instead of that dialogue, ask yourself, okay, well, wait a minute. Well, what would I like? How would I like it to be instead of how would I like it not to be? Because remember, your deep mind doesn't understand not. It doesn't understand what a not table is. It doesn't understand what a don't smoke is. It doesn't understand what a no bills is. It only understands what a table is and what a healthy lung is and what prosperity is and what a paid in full is. Does that make sense? So you're not going to get what you want by talking about what you don't want. You will instead get more of what you don't want, because every time you talk about those things that you don't want, there is a picture attached to that. And it may be such a subtle picture that you don't notice it. But those pictures are what are showing your mind what you want. Remember, there is a level of mind at which you do not have a separate identity any longer. The same mind that you have that creates your results is the same mind that creates the universe, that creates you, that makes the flowers grow, and that makes the oxygen be able to move through your bloodstream and be and replace the carbon dioxide. It's the same mind that creates photosynthesis. It's the same mind that's responsible for all the evolutionary processes. It's the same mind that creates sunsets. It's the same mind that does all of it. It's the same creative principle flows through you as your deep mind as flows through the entire cosmos. That is what I would call God. That is what I would call deity. That is what I would call the creator, is not necessarily some being separate from me up in the sky. That doesn't make sense at all to me. But it's the actual laws of nature. That's what God is. And if we can work with the laws of nature to get what we want, instead of working with the laws of nature to get what we don't want, then we will feel a lot more profoundly happy and successful in this life. And that's what magic really is about for me. So let's recap all of this. Your experience is scientifically exact, the exact same level of vibration as your consciousness. You are 100% responsible for the way you experience your life. If you are experiencing life in a way that is unhappy or that you don't like, it's very temporary at best to go into the world of effect to try to change that. Instead, we need to look within and ask ourselves, where within my mind, where in my emotional body, in my mental body, in my attitudes, am I vibrating at the level that the effect is vibrating? And what I want to do is raise those vibrations. Now, how do we raise the vibrations? Well, remember, for us, the vibrations are raised to the degree which we are relaxed and at peace. So if you're carrying tension around, you are, by definition, lowering your vibration. And a lower vibration internally will demand an external reflection of that same experience. That is Metaphysics 101. That's how it works. So in order for us to raise our vibrations, we must be meditating every day. Now, if you just meditate, you will raise your vibrations. But let's say, in addition to meditate, why don't we meditate in a magical sense, that not only are we raising our vibrations, but we're raising our vibrations and we are active in our meditation so that we can picture that which we desire in our world, in our life. Because from our perspective, magic is a form of worship. It is a high form of worship because we are creative beings and we're here to have what it is that we want. The more we have what we want, the less we think about trying to take from other people, because we understand that there's an infinite amount of resources. It's unlimited what we can do, what we can have, what we can be. And so the happier we are and the more that we experience in our lives of this abundance, of this plenty, the less likely we are going to be going out and getting in other people's business and thwarting other people's freedoms and taking from other people and messing with other people's lives. So a lot of people will hear this kind of thing and think, well, that sounds awfully selfish. But altruism of itself is silly. Altruism is silly. If you're thinking of other people at the expense of yourself, that's sort of like communism, If you take it to its nth degree, the ultimate altruism is, well, nobody should have anything for themselves. They should just work for other people. So let's just not let anybody have anything of their own, and we're just going to give it to the government, and the government will decide what the good of the people are. That's not what I would call that's not what I would call freedom. To me, if you are focusing on yourself, now what do they say in a plane situation? If the oxygen masks come down, take care of yourself first, then take care of your kid or your elderly parent or whoever's needing help. Take care of yourself first, because if you're not taken care of, you are of no use to anybody. So when I say that altruism in that sense is silly, that doesn't mean that I don't think that we should be of service. Obviously, if you've heard anything that I've said in any of my podcasts, service is the ultimate goal. But you can't give something that you don't have. You can't give something that you don't have. So if you're not happy, how are you going to be spreading happiness around? In fact, the happier you are, the less you're going to have to think about how do I spread happiness around. It's just going to be natural. It's going to be a natural response. Where do I give love? Where do I give love? Where do I help? How can I help? How can I help? How can I help? Because you understanding that you don't take from other people to get. It's an unlimited source of abundance that has been given to you from within. It's within your mind. The more we raise our vibrations, the happier we are, the more we have to contribute to the world. And remember, all minds are joined. So the more my vibrations are raised, the more the whole world's vibrations are raised. You don't get rid of a dark room by cursing at the darkness and trying to shove the darkness out the window. You just turn the light on. You just turn the light on. And that's what we're doing. When we raise our vibration and we become happy, then other people become happier in our presence. It's just, it's a natural response to be drawn to the light, not to the darkness. If you're in a dark room and somebody lights a match, all eyes are on that match, not turned away from it. It's just a natural response. So, other things that you can do when you're trying to raise your vibrations is, I'm not into denial. But I'm also not into addiction. So yes, we need to know what's going on in the world. I think it's important to read the paper. I think it's important to be informed, but not to dwell on it. Because the more you dwell on it and listen to the political pundits over and over and over again, and watch the news over and over and over again, it's going to drag your vibration down. Because what are those things? Those are images in your mind, right? So if you're meditating for 15, 20 minutes a day, once or twice a day, but you're watching CNN constantly over and over and over again for 5-6 hours a day, how is that helping? How is that raising your vibration? So yes, you want to notice what's going on in the world, and then use our creative principle to raise the vibrations regarding those situations. So we don't want to bury our head in the sand. We don't want to bury our head in the sand and pretend like everything's just wonderful when it's not. We want to notice the problems, otherwise how are we going to solve them? But we also don't want to get mired in this downward spiral of, oh, isn't it awful? And there's no way around it, and there's nothing that we can do, and we're all just going to hell in a handbasket, and everything's just horrible, we're all going to die, which is kind of what they're saying on the news if you watch enough of it. Instead, if you can raise your vibration by being aware of that, taking it into your meditation and visualizing a resolution to that problem. So yes, you can use it on a personal scale, but you can also use it on a universal scale. Magic is great stuff, but our responsibility is not how it's going to happen, how it's going to come about. Our responsibility is on what do we want and how do we keep our vibrations raised. Be aware of how we talk to ourselves and to others. Be aware of how we interact with the world, and ask ourselves, is this the highest vibration I'm capable of at this moment? And if it isn't, ask to be led. Remember, we do have a mental teacher, and our mental teacher is simply that part of our mind that is in contact with our higher self, with our deeper mind, that is constantly in contact with the universal consciousness. So there is a part of our mind that is in contact with a universal consciousness that knows what is the highest road to take at any moment. So if you feel like you're in a position of low vibration and you don't know how to get out, all you have to do is just take a moment, take a few breaths, and ask. Ask to be shown, and the way will be shown to you. There is no problem that cannot be resolved. There is no issue that is too big for spirit. We have in our culture this arrogance that says that we can destroy the world. Okay, but and you know, it's true. I mean, we are doing a good job of that. But our biggest, giant, most huge efforts to destroy the world on a mortal level is nothing in comparison to what spirit can do. If we just but ask that we be led, and that we keep raising our vibrations. The more we raise our vibrations, the more the world reflects the same vibratory rate to us, both in our personal life and in our collective lives.